Okay, so here we are. We're back again here on South Beach Gospel Ministries. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe on YouTube and on Facebook and on Rumble, and share the video with whoever you can, and that gives you credit in sharing of the gospel, which we are, of course, going to talk about today. But we're picking up where we left off last time. We had gotten through Revelations chapter 15 and 16, and now we're getting right to the conclusion. We're getting to the hottest chapters in the entire Bible, the final phases of the book of Revelation, final phases of the 70th week of Daniel. Revelation chapter 17 and Revelation chapter 18 are kind of interrelated. We're going to split them up into two parts, Revelation 17 this time and Revelation 18 next time. They both discuss a topic that has been written on extensively, and that is Mystery Babylon. What is Mystery Babylon? The two best books on the subject are this one, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, written in the 1860s, and a follow-up, which is even better because it's more accessible and more readable, Dave Hunt's awesome classic, A Woman Rides the Beast, both of which describe in detail what is really in view in Revelation chapter 17, Mystery Babylon. And they both come to the same conclusion that Mystery Babylon of Revelation 17 is a religious system dating all the way back from the ancient Babylon of Nimrod and Semiramis in the Tower of Babel. Not Neo-Babylon, which is the Babylon of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and so on and so forth. But ancient Babylon, just after the flood of Noah, the first world empire was established by Nimrod, and the Tower of Babel was built so that man could reach up into the heavens, probably some type of a Stargate communication device with fallen angels, and God used his judgment to destroy that tower by changing the languages. And it was there in ancient Babylon that the false religion system, where Satan and the fallen angels were worshipped as gods, disguised as real gods, or the God of the Bible, that whole system began in ancient Babylon and carries forth all the way to the present day. Both Alexander Hislop and Dave Hunt agree in their two classic works in the Roman church system, the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, so we know that that church system is in fact one that has been in existence for over 1,000 years, right? It doesn't date all the way back to Peter. Now, that's an exaggeration that the Vatican promotes, that Peter was the first pope, but we know that it's not the case. But the point that Dave Hunt makes excellently well, and Alexander Hislop as well, is that what city in the world that's most famous is built on 7 hills? And Dave Hunt says, well, you know, there's several cities built on 7 hills, but the one that's most famous are the 7 Palatine Hills of the city of Rome in modern-day Italy, which was, of course, the seat of the Vatican, which when Italy became a nation, sometime around the time of prior to World War I, when Italy was established as an independent country, Vatican City became its own separate sovereign. It's a city that's also a nation. And the point that Dave Hunt and Alexander Hislop both make is which city built on 7 hills, Rome of course is that, is also the headquarters of the world's largest religious system. Only one city. That city would be Rome. And what are the official colors of that Roman church system, the Roman Catholic just means universal, that Roman Catholic system? What are the colors? We find out that they are scarlet and purple, red and purple. The bishops wear what? Purple, and the cardinals wear red. In the book of Revelation, which we're going to look at in a second, we find out that God is giving us a hint so obvious that it's almost like an elementary school color by numbers picture, so that even a 5-year-old could follow it. City built on 7 hills, drunk with the blood of the martyrs. Which entity in the world has killed the most evangelical Bible-believing Christians? Islam? No. Adolf Hitler during the Holocaust? No. Without question, when we look at this from a historical standpoint, the Roman church system has martyred more fundamentalist evangelical believers and followers of Jesus Christ than all of the different terrorist groups in the world combined together over the course of all time. That is referred to in the book of Revelation that was written centuries before the establishment of the church in Rome that became the Roman church system. Now, Paul went to Rome and began preaching, and yes, there was an evangelical church in Rome that defied even the control of the Caesars, and that's why the Caesars saw it as such a great threat. When it was first looked at, Christianity, as it was called first in the city of Antioch, was considered some kind of an aberrant breakaway, radical form of Judaism that only Jewish people were involved in initially. But then, when slaves and soldiers in the city of Rome began hearing about this form of God worship where God sends his son to die for us as opposed to us giving our sons to die for the God, which is what the Roman system was, people flocked to it like a duck to water, like a fish to water. People wanted to hear about a God that loved them so much that he would send his only begotten son to die for our sins, not because we were good and wonderful, but because we were evil and couldn't get into the eternal kingdom of heaven without his assistance. God bless you guys. See you. Our Jewish lady came by to say how much she supported us for coming out here and preaching the word and supporting the nation of Israel. And what a testament. And that's why we do this open air, because people, whether they be Gentiles or Jewish people, they see, man, this guy out here isn't a Jewish guy, and he's out here supporting the nation of Israel, not because Jewish people are better than Gentile people, but because God said to support the nation of Israel, because he created it, and his reputation is on the line if it falls into disaster or disappears. But back to our topic. Okay, so what we know then is that Christians or followers of Jesus began to occupy the city of Rome. And Rome, as a result, started throwing Christians to the lions and feeding them to hungry animals in the Colosseum as sport. Eventually, that Roman Empire system gave way when Constantine in 325 AD saw his supposed vision in heaven, which was probably some kind of a demonic counterfeit. What we know is that he then became the official Pontifex Maximus, or supreme bridge builder and leader of the church that was established in Rome. Killing those guys didn't make people stop converting to become followers of Jesus. It made more people want to do it. Why? They said, if these people, men, women, and children, will go to their deaths proclaiming that Jesus is the Son of God and that believing in him will give us eternal life, and they're facing lions and tigers and bears that are about to tear their bodies apart in the Colosseum at any minute, and they won't deny that, the people that weren't already converted said, hey, I don't have that, and I'm not going to die for Jupiter, I'm not dying for Mars, I'm not dying for Diana, but these people are willing to die for their God, Jesus. Man, they must have something that we need, and we want that. And so Christianity, if you will, that's the term that we now use, began to grow in the city of Rome. But eventually, Constantine in 325 AD saw that if you couldn't beat him, the best way to destroy him would be to join him. So Constantine supposedly converted from paganism to Christianity. He abandoned, supposedly, the gods of the Greco-Roman pantheon. Zeus in Greece was Jupiter in Rome. Supposedly, Constantine adopted Jesus as his God. But what he did is he brought all the pagan gods dating all the way back to Babylon right along with him. And so what we see then was that Satan was able to defeat the greatest enemy he ever faced, the Christian church, by joining it. And then by doing so, neutralized it. And it was from that 325 AD conversion, supposedly, of Constantine, that we then saw that the Roman state became the official advocate and protector and head of the church that was in Rome. And from that, we eventually got what we now call today the Roman Catholic system that's based in Vatican City in Rome. And those guys throughout the ages have slaughtered more Christians than any of the Roman empires that preceded the establishment of that Roman church system, because the Roman church system is based on ancient Babylonian paganism, which is the point Dave Hunt and Alexander Hislop make in their works, A Woman Rides the Beast by Dave Hunt and The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. Hislop's book, written in the 1860s, again, is a little harder to find, but you can still find it if you go online. Dave Hunt's book, you can get it at his website, thebereancall.org, and you can usually get it online. Barnes & Nobles might even have it. But anyway, the point being that it is beyond question that the book of Revelation, which was revealed to John in 96 AD, predicted an event in time some 5, 6, 7 centuries down the road when Rome would become not the chief persecutor of the Christian church, but the chief advocate and the head of the so-called Christian church, but what was really a cleverly disguised form of ancient Babylonian paganism with Christian words and terms mixed in from the Bible to get people to come along with it. So Saturnalia, which was based upon the worship of the god of the sky, Saturn, which was a drunken revel around the time of the winter solstice, which witches and Satan is, to this very day, acknowledged as a holy high day because it's the darkest day of the year. So of course evil worships the darkness. So the darkest day of the year is December 21st. It's the shortest day of the year, so it's the time when there's most darkness in a day and the least bit of sunlight during the day. And from December 21st through the 25th, that was the Bacchanalian sort of Saturnalia celebration when people had orgies and got drunk and did all kinds of crazy things in the city of Rome. And that was converted over into what we now call Christmas, celebrating on December 25th. So all Constantine had to do was just change a couple of names and throw a couple of figures in there, and all of a sudden you've got people who were pagans who loved and were wedded to their pagan revels now being willing to convert into the official state church system of Rome because they got to keep their pagan celebrations, except they just had to adopt a new name. So instead of calling something Saturnalia, we called it Christmas. Now we have a question.
Are you sure Israel is the best friend? I don't think so.
Oh, well, now we
No.
have somebody here who
killed
is
So what do
objecting
you
to us
think?
coming
No,
out
no,
and
no.
supporting Israel. So again, when you come out, hold on a second. So what? Well, the First Amendment gives us the right to do it.
Your heart and that's all.
So we have an opponent of our coming out to tell people about Jesus. So, and certainly she's certainly able to do that. But anyway, to get back to what we were saying about Rome, the Roman system really is now a paganized form of pseudo-Christianity. And so what we found out then is that the Saturnalia became Christmas, and all of these different pagan holiday dates were converted to Christian names, so that Easter, which was the Feast of Ishtar, which was the worshiping of really the wife of Nimrod back in ancient Babylon, was Semiramis. And Semiramis was the woman who claimed that after her husband Nimrod died, he came back to life, became the sun, and impregnated her with a beam of sunlight, sort of replicating or imitating the virgin birth of Jesus centuries before the birth of Jesus Christ, which is why a lot of people to this very day will come up to me and say the Anunnaki are the real religion. Christianity is just a counterfeit of the Mesopotamian Sumerian religions worshiping the Anunnaki because there was a virgin who gave birth to a god-man. So in Egypt's case, Horus is that virgin-born god-man who's really a type or figure or picture of the Antichrist. In ancient Babylon, that individual was Tammuz. And so Semiramis and the resurrected sun god Nimrod supposedly gave birth to the supernatural sun Tammuz, who is a type of the Antichrist. And so you got those dates now being mixed in to the Roman Christian system, which now has become the Roman Catholic Church, which is why they have all of those strange rituals that have nothing to do with the Bible, but have everything to do with the Roman clergy and the Roman liturgy and the Roman ritual, which is what the Roman Catholic Church is. We don't have time to go into that, so take a look at The Two Babylons, Alexander Hislop, and A Woman Rides the Beast by Dave Hunt. So let's go ahead and jump in to the book of Revelation, and let's take a look at what, again, was written centuries before the establishment of the Roman church system, or the Roman Catholic Church, or the Babylonian form of Christianity. And there's always been paganism all the way from the Tower of Babel all the way through. But it wasn't until after Jesus Christ came, died, and rose from the dead that in the city of Antioch, followers of Jesus were derisively referred to as Christians, or Christianity is what the term eventually became. It wasn't a term that Jesus used to refer to himself. He never called himself a Christian, and he never called his followers Christians. But that term, which is from the Greek word for Messiah, Christos, eventually became the title that we see individuals adopting. And so therefore, there you have it. Jehovah's Witnesses claim to be Christians, Roman Catholics claim to be Christians, Mormons claim to be Christians, evangelical born-again fundamentalist Christians who believe the Bible only are referred to as Christians. And so you have all of those different aberrant belief systems coming together under the term Christianity. So the term Christianity really becomes less and less useful. Yeah, it's a different belief system than Islam, different from Buddhism, different from Zoroastrianism. But other than that, it's really a confusing term, and people that don't know what the Bible actually teaches can sometimes mistakenly lump all of those different aberrant pseudo-Christian groups together under one heading. But when we get to Revelation 17 today, and again, it's important to note that a guy named Joe Chambers, who runs Paul Creek Ministries, has written extensively on Mystery Babylon, on the city of Babylon, which we see referred to in both Revelation 17 and Revelation 18. Joe Chambers takes the position that Babylon in Revelation 18 is referring to the rebuilt city of Babylon that the Antichrist will use as his headquarters. Dave Hunt says that the Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18 is the Roman church system based in the city of Rome. Chuck Missler comes along and takes a position that I adopt, is that both of them are right. The religious system, Mystery Babylon, which is why it's a mystery, right? The occult means hidden knowledge. Occultic knowledge is hidden knowledge. That started where? Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 6, when the serpent, Satan, seduced the woman into partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's knowledge that God wanted to keep hidden from Adam and Eve because it would corrupt them. And so when she partook of the knowledge God tried to hide from her, to preserve her, and gave to her husband, and he partook of it, they were the first partakers of occultic, that is to say, hidden knowledge, with a view, Eve believed, into making herself a goddess. And it's that same system that was in place in Babylon. And the reason why it was in place in Babylon, because Satan was so spectacularly successful in the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3, he decided to repeat the motif. He is brilliant and he is powerful, but he is not original and he is not creative. He can't create stuff, and he doesn't seem to think on his own. He seems to imitate whatever God does. And he got one plan that actually worked in Genesis chapter 3, and he's repeated the same plan over and over and over again, which is why you see in the Mystery Babylon system, it's based upon goddess worship, not a male deity, but a female deity, a goddess worship. And that started after the death of Nimrod, who was himself a type of the Antichrist. And his wife Semiramis took over and sort of created the mythos that she is some kind of supernatural being, and that she was able to give birth to a virgin, or give birth to a child, even though she was supposedly still a virgin after her husband Nimrod died, because he impregnated her with a beam of sunlight. And so that whole system came up where a woman was exalted into the position of a goddess, and she was worshipped as the giver of life, the queen of heaven. And we saw even in the Old Testament that God condemned Israel because they started adopting some of the pagan practices of the nations surrounding them, and that included the worship of female deities, and one in particular was called the Queen of Heaven, who was worshipped even in the Temple of Solomon in ancient Israel, and God got mad about that. And that's one of the reasons Israel kept getting in trouble with God, is because that system was in place. And so throughout the years, from ancient Babylon, from the Tower of Babel forward, even through ancient Israel, a goddess worship system was used by Satan, because women, you know, were told, hey, you're being discriminated against by this chauvinistic male deity that's the God of Israel, who we later found out was the father of the Lord Jesus Christ. And he's been able to successfully use that same motif throughout the years. And that's why the Roman Catholic Church system, which supposedly is a form of Christianity, where you would think Jesus is the head of the church, he really isn't, right? It is Mary. Mary is the deity that's most revered. Mary is really the Old Testament Queen of Heaven, which is the ancient Babylonian Semiramis, the sky goddess, the fertility goddess. Some people call her Mother Nature. In Europe, the European continent is named after her in her guise as Europa, which was the sky goddess fertility who gave birth to the nations in what is modern day Europe. And so her name changes, but the song remains the same. Ancient Babylonian paganism, a woman being exalted into a goddess position, worshipped by the world, with Satan really being the one dressed in drag, calling the shots from behind the scene. And so again, I take the position Chuck Missler takes, that Mystery Babylon system isn't out question being referred to in Revelation 17 as the modern day Roman Catholic Church system. The purple and red is the dead giveaway, in addition to the 7 hills and 7 mountains. But in Revelation 18, that reference to Babylon refers to a commercial political entity, which very well may be the rebuilt city of Babylon on the Euphrates River in modern day Iraq. That's the position that Joe Chambers takes. That's the position that Chuck Missler takes. But Chuck Missler also adopts the Dave Hunt position that the Roman Catholic Church system is the mystery form or the religious form of Babylon referred to in Revelation 17. But what we find out then is that after Antichrist uses the Mystery Babylon system to detract people from the worship of the real God of the Bible, after we get through the halfway through the 70th week of Daniel into that final 42 months or final 1260 days, Antichrist no longer needs a false one world pseudo-Christian form of religion to unite the world together. He becomes the deity that becomes worship, so he doesn't need a female deity goddess-based worship system, which is what the Roman Church system is to this very day. So he does away with it in Revelation 17, and the only entity left to be worshipped as God is his self, the Antichrist. Satan is now indwelling the body of the Antichrist after what we believe to be an assassination attempt from which he recovers, which causes all the nations to wonder after the beast because he did a supernatural resurrection imitation. So with the time we have left, let's jump in there and take a look at some of the passages. Revelation 17, and it says, "And there came one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls," we looked at that last week, "and talked to me, saying, Come hither, and I will show you the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have made themselves drunk with the wine of her fornication." And so the point being that when you look at the Roman Church system coming out of the Roman Empire system, clearly you find that the Catholic Church, especially early on in its iteration, was the commander of the kings of the earth. When the King of England disagreed, he would get disfellowshipped. He would get kicked out of the Catholic Church, which means he couldn't go to heaven. And that's how the Church of England formed. The Anglican Church, formed after a split between London and the Vatican in the city of Rome. And so what we see then is that God is giving us a hint that this whore of Babylon, fornication, uncleanness, infidelity, unfaithfulness, is describing what on earth would be like a prostitute. A female who is unfaithful and sells her body for money is one of the most vile terms that could be used, and God himself chose it. John didn't choose it. God chose it and dictated these terms to John, and he wrote it down for us here in Revelation 17. And it says, "The kings of the earth committed fornication." So we see that the kings of the earth to this very day, presidents and ambassadors and rulers, all come to the Vatican to get the blessings of the Pope because they need not his military might anymore, because that's gone for now, but they need his political and socio-influential power. The power to go to heaven is a really, really persuasive tool that he can use over all the peoples of the earth. You know, you got Romanism in South America, Central America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia. it's all over the world. And so we see then that it's predicted even as far back as 96 AD, some 2,000 years ago, that this would be the case. And then Dave Hunt gets his title for his book from verse 3, and he says, "And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of the names of blasphemy, and having 7 heads and 10 horns." And that 7 heads and 10 horns clearly is making a reference to Daniel chapter 7 and the rise of the Antichrist, and how, there were 10 nations and 10 kings of those nations, and 3 rebelled against the Antichrist, and he had to kill or destroy 3 of the 10, and 7 were left. And then after Antichrist is killed and resurrected, the other 7 said, "Who can make war against the beast?" And they all wondered after the beast, and that's how Antichrist rose to power as the one world ruler. And so the 7 heads and 10 horns we see in Revelation 17 verse 3, and a woman riding upon that beast. She isn't fighting it or bucking it, as Dave Hunt points out, shows that the Antichrist system really starts as a mystery Babylon form of pseudo-Christian occultism, that a woman or a female deity worship system is used by the Antichrist. They work together. They are bringing the whole world together, uniting them under the false goddess worship system. Want to go to heaven? Worship the Queen of Heaven, Mary, and you get to go to heaven. And her representative is the Antichrist and his false prophet, who might be one of the popes, it has been suggested. That's a possibility. It seems like it becomes more and more likely with each passing day. And so we find out then that the woman was arrayed in, guess what? Purple and scarlet color, and decked out with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of the abominations and filthiness of her fornication. That sounds just like the Roman system, right? Because I remember when I was, I'd gone to law school in Georgetown, but the most impressive of the Catholic university, Georgetown was the very first Catholic university in America, established by the Jesuits in 1789, but the Catholic University of America, which was 3 or 4 miles north of Georgetown's law school in Capitol Hill, has a basilica in it that the Pope chose to come to speak when he came to America for, the first time ever, I think it was, back in, 2012 or something like that. He didn't go to Georgetown University or speak in the little Dahlgren Chapel, which is about the size of the area I'm speaking in now, maybe not bigger than, the size of your living room and kitchen combined together, which is where John F. Kennedy and his wife, Jackie Kennedy, that's where they worshiped when they lived in the Georgetown section of Washington, D.C., when he was still a senator before he became president. It's just a little chapel. It's like 200 years old, but it's small. But if you go to the Catholic University of America and go inside that basilica, I was doing some recruiting for the state attorney's office once when I went back a few years ago, and during our lunch break, I got a chance to go inside that basilica and walk around. Man, it was outfitted with as much gold as I've ever seen in my life, other than when I went to the Egypt Museum in Cairo, Egypt, and you saw the Sphinx or the burial sarcophagi of the different pharaohs, that was made of solid gold, actually. But there was even more gold in this basilica in Washington, D.C. at the Catholic University of America, and the colors purple velvet and red velvet everywhere. Golden candles with purple and red velvet surrounding them. And I thought immediately of Revelation chapter 17. This is a perfect description of that church system. And so this woman outfitted in purple and scarlet, Dave Hunt makes that conclusive argument that this has to be the Roman church system. It would be too much of a coincidence otherwise. And she has precious stones, a golden cup in her hand, but it's filled with abominations and fornication. And then in verse 5 it says, "And on her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth." And that is identifying a religious system. That's not a physical city that's being described. That's a religious worship system that is being promoted by a female deity entity. And so he says, "And I saw a woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered with great admiration." Now that English word we have in our King James is admiration. It really means astonishment. I wondered with, oh my gosh, what? Wait a minute, this is a religious system run by a woman, but she's the greatest man killer in the history of the planet Earth. How could that be? And so John was astonished when God showed him these scenes, and then an angel came up to explain to John what he was looking at. And then it says, verse 8, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell upon the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that, here, quote, was and is not and yet is. And so the passages from Revelation chapter 17, verse 8 through Revelation chapter 17, verse 12 are probably the most complex and confusing in all of the Bible. But if we sit down and take our time, I think we can figure out what it is that it's saying. So this beast is a city, but it's also a religious system. It's a form of worship, and it says that it was and is not and yet is. Is that a reference to the possible existence of the Antichrist prior to being indwelt by Satan, his assassination, so he doesn't exist anymore, and then he comes back to life? Some expositors think that that's a reference to the resurrection after the assassination of the Antichrist. Verse 9, it says, and here's the mind which hath wisdom. You need a mind of wisdom to figure out these next few verses. And it says, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman satteth. This is what Dave Hunt uses as one of his primary reasons for believing that the 7 Palatine hills of Rome identify the Roman Catholic Church system as this Revelation 17 whore of Babylon. And then it goes on to say, verse 10, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue for a short space. Now, there are 2 predominant views in dispensational eschatology, or the study of Bible prophecy, as to what this means. And the position taken by J. Vernon McGee, one of my favorite Bible teachers from childhood onward, is that this refers to 5 Roman emperors, 5 Caesars that existed prior to John being imprisoned on the Isle of Patmos by, it was Emperor, the name escapes me right now. He is the one that imprisoned John, but there were 5 Caesars prior to John's imprisonment in about 96 AD. And so J. Vernon McGee takes the position that the 5 that preceded were the 5 Roman emperors, the one that put John in prison on the Isle of Patmos, who was alive at the time the book of Revelation was being dictated to John. And then it goes on to talk about 7 kings, 5 fallen. J. Vernon McGee says these are Caesars. 1 is the one who has John imprisoned on the Isle of Patmos, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh he must continue for a short space. J. Vernon McGee says that refers to the Antichrist. Now there's another position taken by Chuck Missler and maybe some others, maybe Dave Hunt agrees with that as well, and Chuck Missler thinks that the 5 kings are the leaders of 5 great world kingdoms, and that would be Assyria, Egypt, ancient Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome are the 5 super kingdoms of the world. And then the one that is the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire was in existence at the time the book of Revelation was being written. And it was and was not. Rome was, and then it fell out of existence. And then, supposedly, right, the Roman Empire doesn't exist anymore right now. But the Roman Empire system is believed to be revived, and it's called by some the revived Roman Empire, and that's what the feet on the metallic man statue in the dream of Daniel, or excuse me, in the dream that Daniel interpreted for King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2, many believe is a form of the revived Roman Empire. And so that is the one that must come and continue for a short space. So that kingdom of the Antichrist, headed by the Antichrist himself, will last for how long? Actually, only for the second half of the 7-year tribulation period, the 70th week of Daniel, which is 1,260 days. That's a short space in comparison to 6,000 years of human history. And thank goodness, because the Bible says if the days went any longer than 1,260, Antichrist would kill everybody on earth, including all the Jews, and then he would kill off all the Gentiles, and only the Nephilim hybridized super soldiers that are part of his army will be the ones left over to inherit the earth. And so then it goes on to say, verse 11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. So again, what we think here is that this is referring to the 7 kings or kingdoms that are referred to in Daniel chapter 2. It talks about a beast with 10 horns, and 3 of the horns are broken off, and then that leaves 7. Horns and kings are synonymous in the book of Daniel. Horns and kingdoms are synonymous in the book of Daniel. And so what we believe is here that when you're looking at the book of Revelation, you're looking at the New Testament form of the book of Daniel. And when you're looking at Daniel in the Old Testament, you're looking at the Old Testament version of the book of Revelation. Both of those prophets were given the same information about the same 7-year period of time that's known as the 70th week of Daniel because of Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. Referring to a 7-year period of time when Antichrist will come to power, reign, and then be destroyed by Jesus Christ at Armageddon, which we looked at last week, for those of you that haven't seen it yet, and Revelation chapter 16, and we'll look at it again when we get to Revelation chapter 19. But, okay, so what we think then is that these 10 horns are talking about 10 kings or kingdoms, 3 of which rebel against the rise of the Antichrist to power and are destroyed, and the 7 that are left over after he's killed and come back to life say, we can't beat a guy who can't die, we're going to join up with him. And that's what we're looking at here in Revelation chapter 12. And so then it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest were 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as of yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So the Antichrist empowers these 10. Again, in Daniel, 3 of them kind of rebel, and then they're chastised, and the 7 that are left over become loyal sycophants of the Antichrist during his last 3.5 years. Verse 13, and these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. And these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. And that's what we looked at last week in part in Revelation chapter 16, and what we will look at again when we get to Revelation chapter 19 at the second coming of Christ. And verse 16 says, the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and agree to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. So what we see then is that this kingdom of the Antichrist, which starts out as a religious goddess worship system, which we believe is the modern day iteration of the Roman Catholic Church headed by the Pope, who might be the false prophet that's referred to in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, how he does signs and wonders, making fire come down from heaven in the sight of men to get people to worship Antichrist eventually as a deity. And once that is accomplished, Antichrist, who is now indwelt by Satan himself after his assassination and resurrection, no longer needs a false Christianity based upon a goddess worship system, which is the Roman Catholic Church. So God puts it in the heart of Satan and the Antichrist, destroy the whore of Babylon, destroy the Roman church system, and you get to be the only God that the whole world worships. And so that's what we see at the conclusion of Revelation chapter 17, and that's why Revelation chapter 18 is talking about a commercial, maybe a physical entity of a city that's different than this mystery Babylon system, which is a religious system that's based upon goddess worship and a false pseudo-Christian form of Christianity. And so God puts it in the heart of the Antichrist and the Antichrist system and his kings under his control to destroy the Roman church system. And it's just because, right, the Roman church system has killed more evangelical Christians than all of the other religions of the world, all of the other communist agencies, the former Soviet Union persecuted Christians. You have different nations that persecuted Christians for religious and or political reasons. If you combine all those assassinations and martyrdoms together, you won't have as many as you have with the Roman Catholic Church system. And as crazy as that sounds, take a look at Dave Hunt's book, A Woman Rides the Beast, and you will get documentary proof of that very claim in these, 700 or 800 pages of information, man. He documents everything, and it's much easier to read than Alexander Hislop's version, which was written in the 1860s, though it's just as accurate. So, okay, so we go on and find out that in verse 17, it was God himself that put it in the heart of the Antichrist to destroy this whore of Babylon system so that he can be the God that everybody worships. And then it says, verse 18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Which city rules over the kings of the earth? Not New York City, not Washington, D.C., not Toronto, Canada, not Jerusalem, Israel. The city that rules over the kings of the earth has to be Rome, because it was once the seat of the western branch of the Roman Empire, which we know from the book of Daniel is going to be revived again. Daniel chapter 2, the feet of the metallic man, which is divided in two, those legs of iron, the eastern and western branch of the Roman Empire, Rome in the west, Byzantium, Constantinople in the east, will eventually come back together again in this brand new entity that will be made up of non-human entities, because we know in Daniel chapter 2 verse 43 it says, the entities that make up the kingdom of the Antichrist shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. The they personal pronoun says they're going to mix their genetics with human genetics to create a brand new superhuman. So if the they doing the mixing are mixing with humans, then the they doing the mixing must be non-human. And so we know that that is clearly a reference to the Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 through 4, reference to the Nephilim, which God sent the worldwide flood of Noah to destroy this super hybridized demonic genome from taking over the entire planet Earth by interbreeding out of existence all of the Adamic humans on the face of the planet Earth. But just as we know, in Genesis chapter 6 and 4, it says, there were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when fallen angels came in on the sons of God, fallen angels, came in unto the daughters of men, and children were born unto them who became great, the mighty men of old, or men of renown. Take a look at Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 4, and you'll see that. And so we saw in Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, that these Nephilim supermen were destroyed by God with the flood of Noah, but were predicted to come again. How they come again, we don't know for sure, but we do know that Jesus said in his most impressive and most famous and most extensive Bible prophecy seminar, Matthew chapter 24, after the Olivet Discourse, he said that at the time of the coming of the Son of Man, at the second coming, at the end of the 70th week of Daniel, at Armageddon, we looked at that verse, Revelation 16 and Revelation 19 coming up, that it will be the same as it was in the days of Noah. And how was it in the days of Noah? And then you see people, well, they're talking about getting married, men, giving and taking each other in marriage. No, there's always been marriage since the Garden of Eden. There's been that. But what made the days of Noah distinctive was that God had to destroy the world, not because men were getting married to women, but because fallen angels were getting married to women and creating a race of hybridized super soldiers who were partially genetically human and partially genetically non-human. And they dominated the earth so much so, the cities of Atlantis, Lemuria, all of those legends are based in reality. God had to destroy them with the worldwide flood of Noah, or the human race would be extinguished by interbreeding them out of existence. So we've gotten to the end of our text for today, but clearly we find out then that what we see is that Jesus predicted in Matthew 24 the return of the Nephilim at the conclusion of days, and what we see in Daniel chapter 2 verse 43 is that the revived Roman Empire system will be even more powerful than the original Roman system, because it'll be made up not of just really tough Etruscan soldier warriors from Rome, but made up of superhuman hybridized individuals like Goliath of Gath and Anak and Arba, the super giant men that were destroying all of the people around them, and God had to send the nation of Israel to eradicate them from the earth once again. So we're going to pick it up next week in Revelation chapter 18, when we're going to look at the political, governmental Babylonian system, which Joe Chambers and Chuck Missler believe will result in the rebuilt city of Babylon. And it makes sense if Rome, as Dave Hunt correctly points out, and Alexander Hislop correctly point out, is the headquarters of the religious form of the Mystery Babylon system. Once God puts it in the heart of Antichrist to destroy that religious form, he now moves from the city of Rome to set up a new headquarters in Babylon. And that explains some of the strange verses about the ephod being lifted up by unclean bird, a woman with the wings of a stork, almost like a female angel. There are no female angels in the Bible, but there are hybrids in the Bible that are unclean and not created by God, and that might be what that vision of the unclean woman with the wings of a stork picking up a basket, and inside of it is the implements of the new rebuilt city of Rome, and it flies away to the plain of Shinar to establish a base for this new system of evil, which Shinar is really the county in which ancient Babylon was located in. So we'll pick all of that up when we get to next week, but your homework assignment then is read Revelation 17 in conjunction with Revelation 18. And if you get a chance, get a hold of The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop and A Woman Rides the Beast by Dave Hunt, which certainly both of those books are still available. And man, that will really add to your knowledge of Bible prophecy, and specifically what this term Babylon, which is the word that's most used in the Bible, other than the city of Jerusalem, Babylon is the next most mentioned city in all of the Bible. There's a reason for that, and I think we're going to see those reasons become painfully clear in the coming weeks, days, and years as we get closer to the rapture of the church and the second coming of Christ. So until then, like and subscribe on YouTube, South Beach Gospel Ministry. Go out and get your Bible tracts. I like to use the chick tracts, and tell people that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. That's the whole point of coming out here, is to be a witness and a testimony to people so that they can hear, and upon hearing they can believe, and upon believing they become psychospiritually and biogenetically born again, and they get eternal life and escape from heaven. That's a great message. That's why it's called the good news. Hell is now canceled out in our future, which makes it great news, quite frankly. And why the news is so good is because we're avoiding something so bad. So go out and do your part in the war by passing out a gospel tract, whether it be Jack Chick tracts or whatever tracts. Go out and tell somebody about how they can get saved in Jesus, and you will have rewards in heaven. And until next time, keep looking up, for our redemption draweth nigh.